Hi guys, welcome back to another video tutorial. So in this tutorial we'll be going over through how to solve functions, or should I say how to solve composite functions with inverse functions incorporated in the question. Now again, just before you kind of think again or overthink it, what you first need to do if you have no idea about composite functions or how to find inverse functions is I'll put a link in the description with the playlist for the topic functions. Okay, so what I would say is go and watch those individual ones, so how to find inverse functions and how to solve a composite function first, because again, if you don't understand those, you won't be able to do this question. Okay, and it's quite simple, but you first need to understand that foundation basics first before you can get to this question. Now let's get straight to the questions. So the first one that we have is saying f of x equals 5x plus 1 and g of x equals 2. Now they're asking us to solve f minus 1x equals g of x. Now first and foremost, if you don't know what this notation means, so this f minus 1x, just so that before we get into the question, this basically means inverse function. Okay, when you see that minus 1 near the letter here, so if you have like g minus 1 for example, or x minus 1, well, you can't have x minus 1 because you have x in here, y, no, not y as well, so like z, t, whatever, minus 1, we should know straight away it's inverse function that they're referring to. Okay, so the question is now how we're going to find our inverse function, right? We need to first find f minus 1x. So the first thing that you need to do when you find inverse function, if you've watched the previous video on inverse function, is you are going to first have y equals to your f of x, right? And this is a standard notation that we start with. The reason why I've put f of x here is because we have f. The function is f. If we had g, we're going to use g of x. Does that make sense? So it's always y equals. Okay, so that's the first notation that you guys need to understand, is y equals whatever the function we're going to find, the inverse. Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to say y equals. Now, do we know what our f of x function is? Do we have an f of x function? We do, because if you look at the question, it's given here. F of x is 5x plus 1. So instead of writing f of x, I'm going to write 5x plus 1. Okay, now what we need to do when we find inverse function is we basically want to make x the subject of this equation. So the inverse function, there is a diagram that you can do, like some sort of box diagrams or anything. So if you understand that way, stick with it. I'm just going to do this way. I just find this easier, and it's just quite straightforward for me anyway, so maybe it might help you. So what we want to do is we want to find make x a subject, right? So the first thing we can do is we can quickly rewrite this as 5x plus 1 is equals to y, right? Same thing. So I've just put that there and I've put that y there. Because I want to make x the subject, I don't want anything that's not x on the left hand side. So you see this 1 here, I'm going to move that to the other side. So now that becomes y minus 1. Remember, whenever you move something from one side to the other, the sign changes. So plus 1 becomes minus 1. Final step that we have to do here, because we want to make x a subject, we don't want this 5, we're going to divide it by 5. Okay? So that's me making x a subject. Now, the way we need to rewrite this, the inverse function, so basically my inverse function, so we write f of minus 1x equals, the final step what we do when we write inverse function is basically we need to change the y into x. So now my y becomes x. So you have x minus 1 over 5. That is our inverse function for f minus 1x. Pretty much it. That's it. Okay? Now, what we got to do next is, remember, the question didn't say just find the inverse function. The question said solve f minus 1x equals gx. Now, if you look at this equation, we know what our f minus 1x is, which is what we found here. So we can write x minus 1 over 5, over 5 equals g of x. What's my g of x? G of x is given in the question. If you look at it here, right, equals 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to equate that to 2. So now what you have, okay, I guess I should have kind of put a dotted line here. Okay, now what you have is you have your f minus 1x, which is here, right? This f minus 1x is here, so x minus 1 over 5 equals g of x. What's g of x? Oh yeah, look, g of x is 2 here, so I put it to 2. Remember, solve. It said solve. Solve basically means you need to find a value of x. So we're going to solve this equation, okay? So the first thing that you can do whenever you see something like this in this form, like a fraction, there is a little shortcut that you can do, which is cross multiplying, or diagonally you can multiply this. So you see this 5 here, you can times it by 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. And because we want to find x, bring the 1 to the other side. So that becomes a plus 1. So essentially what you're doing is 10 plus 1, 11. And that is our answer. Pretty much this is it, x equals 11. Okay, so remember, it's not as hard. It always looks hard, right? Maths questions always looks hard at the beginning when you have no idea what's going on. But when you break it down step by step, it's actually very simple and it's actually quite repetitive. The only difference the only difference is the numbers change. That is it. Okay, so now let's get to the second question now, right? The second example. So now this is slightly different. It's not that different, but it's just kind of laid out in a different way. So it's asking us to solve g of x equals f minus 1x. So it's exactly the same thing, but I just switched it around. So the first thing we want to do is, again, find our f minus 1x function, so our inverse function, right? So we want to find our f minus 1x function. So the first thing we can do to do that is we're going to say y is equals to f of x, again, because it's f, so we put f. Now, do we know what our f of x is? If you look at the question, we do. We have it here. So I'm going to take this 2x minus 4 over 3 and put it in this function. So 2x minus 4 over 3. So now that's my inverse, well, not my inverse function, that's my f of x function. Remember, what we want to do when we have this, we want to make x the subject. Okay? So to make x the subject here, what we need to do first is you need to get rid of this 3. And to get rid of this 3, we want to cross multiply. It's just literally like this, what we did here. So we cross multiply. So we have 3y is equals to 2x minus 4, right? So we can rewrite this as 2x minus 4 is equals to 3y. Now, because we want to make x a subject, we don't want the minus 4 on the left-hand side, so we move that to the right-hand side. So remember, that becomes plus 4. And our final step, we want to get rid of the 2, so we divide that by 2, right? Now, remember, what's our final step for inverse function? Is we need to change the y into x. So my inverse function, if I write here in f minus 1x equals that, 3y now becomes 3x plus 4 over 2. That is our inverse function for f minus 1x. Okay, now remember the question said solve g of x equals f minus 1x. So if we want to solve this, what's our g of x? 6 minus x. So I'm just going to write 6 minus x equals our inverse function, which we found here, right? So we're going to equate it because it says here equals to f minus 1x. So we're going to equate it to 3x plus 4 over 2. And again, we're going to solve for x now. So we can cross multiply this 2. So careful, when you cross multiply this 2 by this, you're essentially going to times it like this in a bracket. So you're going to times 2 by every single term here. Then you can keep 3x plus 4 here. So if we expand that, we have 12 minus 2x is equals to 3x plus 4. Okay, so now what we can do, let me just rewrite this. I know it's a bit muddled up, but okay. So we can rewrite this as 3x plus 4 is equals to 12 minus 2x. Remember, you want to find x, okay? So if you want to find x, you want to bring all the x's to the left-hand side, so that 3x plus 2x comes here, 12, and then the 4 goes to the other side, minus 4. So what you have now, if you add them, 5x is equals to 8, and because we want to find our x value, so x is equals to divided by 5. So our x value for this question is x equals 8 over 5. Okay, so this is pretty much how you solve inverse function. Now again, you need to understand how to find inverse function first, and you need to understand as well the composite function as well. Well, actually, you don't really need composite function here. I just realized that, because you need to yeah, there is no composite function. Okay, so what I'll do now is I will give you guys a question to do. Try one question, see if you get it, and then if there's anything that you don't understand, just put it down in the comments. Right, so here's some questions for you guys to try and do. So we have, should have labeled this as, okay, question 1 and question 2. So pause the video, try the questions out, and then play the video back again, and then see if you get it right or wrong, and look at the method step by step. That's very important. The method is extremely important here, guys, okay, because that's where you get the marks. Okay, so let's do the first one. So f minus 1x means I need to find my inverse function for f of x. The first thing I'm going to do is y equals f of x. Okay, so y equals, we know our f of x function, which is 6x plus 3. Because we want to find, what we need to do to find the inverse function here now is make x a subject. So what we can do, we can rewrite this as 6x plus 3 equals y. And then because we want x a subject, bring the 3 to the other side, so y minus 3. And the final step is we want to divide that by 6. So y minus 3 divided by 6. So for the final step, we need to do our inverse function. So if we write f minus 1x, we change the y's into x. So that's x minus 3 over 6. So we found our inverse function, and now we're going to equate it with our g of x function, which is 5. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say x minus 3 over 6 is equals to 5. Because we want to find x, we cross multiply this. So x minus 3 is equals to 6 times 5, which is 30. And then x just becomes, if you bring 3 to the other side, becomes plus 3. So 30 plus 3 is 33. If you got this answer, well done. If you haven't, just make sure where you went wrong. Well, look over through your method again. And again, if you still don't understand it, just put it down in the comments. Now the second one here is again the same thing, but this time we have g of x equals f minus 1x. So again, we want to find our f minus 1x function. So I'm going to say y equals f of x. So y is equals to, I know my f of x function is 3x plus 2 over 4. And again, what we want to do here is make x a subject. So we need to get rid of this 4. So what we can do is cross multiply. So we have 4y is equals to 3x plus 2. And now what we can do is we can rewrite this as 3x plus 2 equals 4y, and then bring the 2 to the other side. So that'll be 4y minus 2, because remember you're making x a subject, so get now rid of the 3. So you're going to divide it by 3. So now our f minus 1x function, actually, you know, we'll just write it here. So our f minus 1x function becomes, now change the y into x, 4x minus 2 over 3. Okay, so that we found that. Now the next bit here, because we found our inverse function, we need to solve it, right? So we have g of x. So g of x in this case is 4 minus x equals to f minus 1x, which is our inverse function, which is what we found here. So I'm going to equate that to 4x minus 2 over 3. And remember, we want to find x, a value of x, so we need to solve for x. So we can cross multiply this 3 by 4 minus x. So we can say 3 times 4 minus x equals 4x minus 2. Now we can expand this, so 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times minus x is minus 3x is equals to 4x minus 2. Now because we want to find x, again, you can do this in one line, but I'm just showing you in a way where it doesn't confuse you. So 4x minus 2 equals 12 minus 3x. So if you bring 3x to the other side, you have plus 3x, and then 12 stays here. Now bring the minus 2 to the other side, plus 2. This becomes 7x, and this becomes 14. So x is equals to 14 divided by 7. So that is basically 2. And that's pretty much the answer for this one. So if you got these right, well done. That's great. And that's pretty much how you solve inverse functions with a function question. But obviously there's going to be composite functions with inverse function, but we'll do that as well, so I wouldn't worry too much about that for now. Okay, so that will be a wrap for this video, and yeah, I shall see you on the next one.